Bomber crews did not fight like heroes from adventure films. They fought like engineers inside vibrating machines. Every mission was math, fear, discipline, and routine. Altitude, fuel formation, timing. One mistake meant collision, fire, or disappearance. These films do not exaggerate. They show how bomber warfare was actually fought. Cold, precise, and terrifying. Number 15, 12 O'Clock High, 1949. This is the film every real bomber crew recognizes immediately. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is accurate. The briefings feel correct. The silences feel correct. The tension between command and crew feels painfully familiar. This film understands that bomber warfare was not about courage alone. It was about maintaining formation discipline while flying through controlled chaos. The tactics are shown with rare precision. Combat box formations are treated as life or death geometry. Planes do not wander for cinematic effect. They hold position because drifting meant collision or isolation. Flak corridors are treated as unavoidable zones rather than random explosions. The film shows how commanders had to keep planes together even while watching aircraft disintegrate beside them. Leadership fatigue is the real enemy here. Missions stack. Losses accumulate. Crews fly again before processing what happened the day before. The film accurately portrays how bomber groups rotated crews and how morale could collapse if command cracked. It also shows how discipline was enforced not through shouting but through relentless repetition of procedure. Veterans praise this film because it understood the bomber war was psychological first, mechanical second. No heroic dogfights, no dramatic speeches in the sky, just men doing their jobs knowing statistics were against them. This is not only the most accurate bomber movie ever made, it is the foundation every serious air war film stands on. The number 14, Memphis Belle, 1990. Memphis Belle succeeds because it treats the bomber as a system, not a stage. Every crew position matters, and every failure cascades. The film carefully shows how gunners navigated blind spots, how engineers monitored failing systems, and how pilots fought fatigue more than enemies. The mission structure is textbook 8th Air Force doctrine. Long climb to altitude, assembly over England, formation tightening before crossing the coast. Defensive gunnery, rather than aggressive maneuvering. Damage control procedures are shown in detail, including fuel leaks, feathered engines, and hydraulic failures. These are not cinematic inventions. They are standard crew drills. Flak is treated as the primary threat, not fighters. This is historically correct. Crews feared flak because it was accurate, repetitive, and unavoidable. The film shows how formations flew straight through known kill zones because deviation endangered everyone. There is no dramatic weaving. There is only endurance. What makes this film tactically strong is its refusal to simplify the mission. Multiple threats occur simultaneously. A wounded gunner does not stop the bombing run. A damaged engine does not abort automatically. Crews follow procedure even when terrified. That procedural realism is why pilots and historians still reference this film when discussing bomber operations. Number 13, The Dam Busters, 1955. This film depicts one of the most technically complex bombing missions ever executed and treats it with almost obsessive accuracy. The entire operation is built around engineering limits, navigation precision, and crew coordination rather than spectacle. Low-level flying is portrayed as exhausting and dangerous rather than thrilling. Altitude is measured constantly using spotlights, not guesswork. Speed is fixed, not improvised. Every pass follows a checklist. Crews abort not because of fear, but because parameters are wrong. This is how real missions worked. The film accurately shows how bomber crews trained for months for a single mission. Repetition was survival. Innovation was dangerous unless proven. Even the famous bouncing bomb is treated less as a miracle weapon and more as a fragile experimental device that could fail easily. Losses are shown without exaggeration. Aircraft vanish without ceremony. The mission continues regardless. That cold continuation is the most authentic aspect of the film. It reflects RAF doctrine that emphasized objective completion over individual survival. This is not only a great bomber film, it is one of the most tactically honest war films ever made. Number 12, Strategic Air Command, 1955. This film shifts bomber warfare from survival missions to deterrence missions, and does so with remarkable procedural accuracy. Strategic Air Command was not about flak or fighters, it was about readiness, discipline, and repetition. The film captures that mindset precisely. Crews train endlessly not for combat engagement, but for flawless execution under pressure. Alert procedures are shown with near-documentary realism. Aircraft are maintained in launch condition. Crews are rotated and tested constantly. Checklists are sacred. There is no improvisation. That lack of drama is the point. Nuclear bomber doctrine depended on predictability and flawless coordination across bases, crews, and command. Flight operations emphasize long-range navigation, fuel discipline, and crew endurance. These aircraft were not flown aggressively. They were flown conservatively. Small errors meant mission failure or international catastrophe. The film accurately shows how personal lives were subordinated to operational readiness. What makes this film tactically important is its honesty about bomber culture. The mission never ends. The war may not start. Crews still live inside the mission structure. Veterans of SAC later confirmed the film was unsettlingly accurate. Not because it exaggerated tension, but because it showed how monotony itself became the pressure. Number 11. Target for Tonight, 1941. This is not a polished studio war film. It is closer to a field report filmed with actors and real crews during active operations. That immediacy gives it tactical authenticity modern films struggle to match. Briefings are short, objectives are clear. Crews ask practical questions, not heroic ones. Navigation problems dominate the mission. Weather cloud cover and darkness are constant threats. The film accurately shows how RAF bomber crews relied on dead-reckoning visual markers and timing rather than precision instruments. Miss a checkpoint, and the mission collapses. Radio silence is enforced. Crew communication is minimal and functional. There is no dramatic chatter. Damage occurs quietly, and consequences unfold slowly. The aircraft returns with holes, missing crew members, and no clear sense of victory. This mirrors real RAF experience early in the war. Because it was made during wartime, the film does not romanticize loss. It normalizes it. Aircraft fail. Crews do not return. The operation continues. That emotional restraint is why historians value this film so highly. It shows bomber tactics as they were actually practiced, not remembered. Number 10, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, 1944. This film accurately portrays a bomber mission where tactics were defined by constraint rather than firepower. The Doolittle raid was not about destruction. It was about range calculation, risk acceptance, and morale impact. The film respects those limits. Aircraft modifications are shown in detail. Weight reduction, fuel loading, and takeoff technique are central to the narrative. Crews understand that one miscalculation means crashing into the ocean. The launch sequence from the carrier is tense because it is mechanically precise, not theatrically exaggerated. Mission planning emphasizes one-way flight reality. There is no return plan. Crews understand that success ends with bailout or crash landing. That acceptance is portrayed soberly without heroic framing. This matches historical accounts from the actual crews. The bombing itself is brief and secondary. What matters is execution timing and post-strike survival. That focus aligns with real mission priorities. This was not a bomber assault. It was a strategic message delivered by crews flying on borrowed distance. The film captures that tactical truth with restraint and accuracy. Number 9. Appointment in London, 1953. This film captures something most bomber movies avoid: the grind. Bomber warfare was not a single heroic mission. It was repetition under pressure until something finally broke. Appointment in London understands that truth and builds its entire structure around it. Operational tempo is shown accurately. Crews fly missions, return, debrief, and are back in the air before exhaustion fades. Losses are cumulative, not dramatic. Aircraft vanish from formation and are never mentioned again. This reflects RAF practice, where acknowledgement of loss was brief, because focus had to remain on the next operation. Mission tactics emphasize route discipline and formation timing. Crews follow assigned corridors regardless of danger because deviation threatens navigation accuracy and collision risk. There is no improvisation once airborne. The film shows how Bomber Command demanded obedience to planning even when conditions deteriorated. The most accurate element is fatigue management. Commanders track crew limits, rotations, and morale with cold efficiency. Emotional strain is secondary to operational necessity. Veterans later noted this was one of the few films that captured how Bomber Command treated men as part of a machine, not out of cruelty, but because survival of the force depended on it. Number 8, Above and Beyond, 1952. This film complements 30 Seconds Over Tokyo by focusing less on execution and more on planning doctrine. It shows how bomber missions are shaped long before crews ever see an aircraft. Strategic pressure, technical limitations, and political consequences all define the final mission profile. Aircraft modification is treated as a tactical puzzle. Removing armor, increasing fuel capacity, adjusting takeoff technique. These are not cinematic details, They are mission-defining decisions. The film accurately shows how planners balanced crew safety against mission viability, knowing there would be no margin for error. Training sequences emphasize repetition and discipline. Crews practice procedures until instinct replaces thought. This reflects real bomber doctrine where hesitation killed aircraft. The film also shows command-resistant skepticism and the bureaucratic obstacles that delay unconventional missions. What makes this film tactically valuable is its respect for preparation. The raid succeeds not because of bravery alone, but because variables were reduced methodically. That is how real bomber missions were planned. Not as daring adventures, but as controlled risks shaped by calculation. Number 7. The War Lover, 1962. This film focuses on an uncomfortable reality of bomber warfare. Leadership could be as dangerous as the enemy. While the story centers on personality conflict, the mission execution remains grounded in authentic bomber procedure. Formation flying is shown as restrictive and unforgiving. Pilots do not maneuver for advantage. They hold position because breaking formation invites fighter attack. The film accurately portrays how aggressive flying endangered entire crews, not just individual aircraft. Briefings emphasize obedience to mission profile regardless of personal judgment. The bomber war demanded conformity. The film shows how reckless command decisions created unnecessary exposure while still operating within official doctrine. This tension existed historically, and crews documented it in letters and reports. Combat scenes avoid exaggeration. Attacks are chaotic, but procedural responses dominate. Gunners track sectors. Pilots maintain altitude. Engineers manage failing systems. The film understands that bomber crews survived through teamwork, not heroics. Its tactical realism lies in showing how personality flaws could still operate inside an otherwise rigid operational system. Number 6. Angels 1-5, 1952. This film is often remembered as a fighter command story, but its value to bomber realism lies in how it depicts airbase operations and mission coordination. Bomber missions did not exist in isolation. They were part of an integrated system involving ground control, radar tracking, and timing discipline. Angels 1-5 shows that system accurately. Operational briefings are short, direct, and procedural. Crews are given clear instructions and expected to execute without discussion once airborne. Radio discipline is strict. Orders are acknowledged, not debated. This reflects real RAF doctrine where clarity prevented confusion under stress. The film accurately portrays how Air Command tracked missions in real time. Plots are updated manually. Decisions are made with incomplete information. This mattered for bombers returning damaged or off course. Support decisions were often made blindly. What makes this film tactically important is its portrayal of the invisible structure behind every bomber mission. Crews relied on ground systems they never saw fully. Angels 1-5 captures that reality without dramatization. Bomber warfare was coordinated engineering, not aerial adventure. Number 5. Bombardier, 1943. This film is one of the most technically accurate depictions of bombing doctrine ever produced because it was designed to teach, not entertain. Everything shown is procedure. Nothing is improvised. That makes it invaluable. The Norden bomb site is treated as a precision instrument requiring discipline, not intuition. Crews are trained to fly straight and level regardless of flak or fighters because bombing accuracy depended on stability. The film shows this doctrine clearly and without apology. Training sequences emphasize repetition and failure. Crews miss targets, make errors, and repeat drills until precision becomes instinct. This reflects how bomber training worked historically. Skill was drilled, not assumed. The film also shows how bombing accuracy depended on the entire crew. Pilots, navigators, bombardiers, and engineers functioned as a single system. One mistake nullified the mission. This film may lack drama, but its tactical realism is unmatched. Number 4. Catch-22, 1970. Despite its satirical tone, this film contains some of the most accurate depictions of World War II bomber missions ever filmed. The absurdity does not erase realism, it exposes it. Bombing runs are repetitive, identical, and deadly. Crews fly the same routes at the same altitude day after day because doctrine demanded consistency. This predictability increased losses historically, and the film reflects that grim truth. Mission extensions are portrayed as arbitrary and demoralizing. This was a real phenomenon. Completion thresholds changed as operational needs evolved. Crews documented the psychological damage this caused. Aircraft losses are sudden and unemotional. Planes explode, vanish, and are replaced. The mission continues. That indifference is historically accurate. The film uses satire to reveal how bomber command logic often clashed with human endurance. Number 3. Bombers B-52, 1957. This film presents bomber warfare after it becomes doctrine rather than desperation. Bomber's B-52 is not about combat in the traditional sense. It is about readiness, procedure, and the burden of operating machines whose failure would have strategic consequences far beyond the crew. Flight operations are shown conservatively and accurately. These aircraft are not flown aggressively. They are flown precisely. Navigation, fuel management, and system checks dominate every sequence. Crews follow checklists with near-ritual discipline because improvisation is unacceptable. A small error does not just end a mission, it risks escalation. Alert posture is central. Aircraft are kept mission-ready. Crews live inside a cycle of repetition, waiting, and rehearsal. Scrambles are executed with mechanical calm. There is no celebration. Launch is treated as execution of duty, not heroism. That portrayal aligns closely with strategic air command doctrine of the period. Crew coordination is procedural rather than emotional. Roles are fixed. Communication is minimal and exact. Engineers monitor systems constantly. Pilots maintain stable profiles. Decisions are made according to protocol, not instinct. Personal judgment is deliberately suppressed. What makes this film tactically valuable is its honesty about bomber culture in the nuclear age. The mission may never be flown. The pressure never stops. Bomber warfare becomes a permanent condition rather than an event. Veterans later described this monotony as its own form of psychological strain. Bomber's B-52 shows bomber realism without spectacle, just discipline sustained indefinitely. Number 2. Battle of Britain, 1969. While often remembered for fighter combat, this film presents bomber tactics with rare accuracy and strategic clarity. Luftwaffe bombers fly rigid, predictable formations because their doctrine depended on mutual defensive fire and navigational discipline. They do not maneuver creatively. They follow orders. The film correctly shows bombers as vulnerable once formation integrity is lost. Escort fighters exist to protect bombers, not chase glory. When escorts are pulled away, the bombers suffer immediately. This reflects real Luftwaffe operational failure during the campaign. British interception tactics focus on timing rather than heroics. Bombers are targeted because disrupting formations reduces bombing accuracy and mission effectiveness. This is shown repeatedly without exposition. The film understands the air war was not decided by duels, but by whether bombers reached targets intact. That strategic truth makes its portrayal of bomber operations exceptionally accurate, even within a fighter-focused narrative. Number 1. The Best Years of Our Lives, 1946. This film earns its place not by depicting bomber missions, but by revealing their cost. It shows what happens after discipline no longer has a mission to serve. For bomber crews, survival did not end the war. It followed them home. The B-17 sequences feel authentic because they were created by people who knew the aircraft intimately. The way the bomber is handled, the way the crew moves inside it, and the way silence fills the cockpit all reflect lived experience. More importantly, the film captures psychological aftermath with brutal honesty. Veterans struggle to reconnect with civilian life because bomber warfare trained them to suppress emotion, hesitation, and fear. That conditioning does not fade easily. This is the final truth of bomber realism. Missions were flown by procedure, lives afterward were not. The film completes the story most air war movies stop short of telling. Bomber crews did not fight cinematic wars. They followed rules that demanded obedience over instinct. Formation, discipline, timing, and repetition decided survival. These films honor that reality. They show missions as crews lived them, measured, mechanical, and merciless.